music industry podcast, and I'm David Andreweeb. Let's dig in.
Today I'm chatting with founder of Nashville for Hire, Andrew Galucki. How are you today, Andrew?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm fantastic. It's going to be a great talking to you today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So your online tool allows people to purchase remote music sessions and songwriters from Nashville. Nashville only singers, musicians, songwriters, producers, and engineers. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so Nashville for Hire is basically the quickest way to narrow it down is that in a way it's an online studio for people. It allows people who might be in areas of the world that don't have access to great quality musicians, and you might still want to have something that sounds like it could be on the radio or that you can just be proud of when you put it up online. So we allow people to basically tap into the Nashville talent pool, which people fly from all over the world and try to network to try to be inside of it and on an actual physical location. But most people just can't get out here. So it allows anyone to be able to hire out, whether it just be, one single banjo track that they want to add to their already almost complete song, or you can hire a producer to hire their own people in town and then record an entire song or album here and then layer on your vocals from wherever you'd like to remotely. So we act basically as a connecting tool, and our goal is to be able to have people walk away with the best recording project they've done yet, and it's exciting to be able to see that be done. And we just are wrapping up a project we were helping a girl in Australia with, and she goes to a music school out there, and you would think she'd have people to hire, but nobody knows the American country sound there that can work on her album. So she is doing an EP song by song with us, and it's fun getting to hear it come together and check in on it and see what our producers are doing, because I just know that it wouldn't be available otherwise, and these people get to have something that is kind of priceless for where they're coming from, and just the resources previously available. So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, I guess that's something that's not necessarily top of mind for everyone, because from where I live, country is kind of a big deal. So there's plenty of country players out there, and the Calgary Stampede and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not a country guitarist, but even I picked up a little bit to play a few gigs. So
Yep. Yeah, and it's Nashville has labeled itself as a country town, rightfully so, for a long time. But especially as there's been a big influx, it really is just pretty synonymous with Music City in general. And so the other goal on a different scale for the site is to be able to help expand Nashville from being just a genre piece of staple of country to reflecting what it really is, which is an increasingly diverse music scene. And so that's part of the reason I like living here versus some of the other American cities like LA or New York. Is one, it's a little bit, the cost of living isn't as bad, even though it's definitely going up as it grows, as those cities. But it's also just a smaller pool that's in its growing phase. And it's kind of fun to be a part of that as compared to trying to break into something that's already, going on and just hoping you can climb someone else's ladder. So, that's the fun part, is being able to create a website like this because there's a wide open landscape of growth available, with the great influx of talent here and constantly streaming in.
it's definitely one of those cities I need to visit. I haven't been there yet. People sometimes check out the quality of my content and then say, I assumed you were in Nashville. So,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, so nobody expects I'm in Calgary and in Canada of all places. But
well, that's the great thing about, I guess, the whole online thing is that you can be producing amazing things from anywhere and, be able to benefit financially from that. You don't necessarily have to live in a hub anymore. There's benefits of networking and all that, but that's kind of a cool thing with technology is that you can do it at a high level from all types of places.
It's funny you say that because I was just thinking about that today. I was like, I spent the better part of 3, 4, or 5 years networking, and part of that goal was just to get out of my shell and talking to more people. And, gradually it was like 1 person a day to 3 people a day. And then I worked my way up to 5 people a day plus. Yeah, I only made a few friends through that experience, not a whole lot, but at least I could say that I did it. And then I kind of re-recognized the importance of actually sitting at my desk and doing work again. And there's some people who do so well at the networking thing and make great connections and open up new career opportunities that way. And that wasn't me. I mean, I feel I can connect with just about anybody now, but that's not where things led for me with that whole networking thing. And I even spent time in network marketing. So
it's a weird game. I'm kind of switching. I think it has to be a give and take over time, like you're saying, because I'm kind of re-switching back into, I guess a networking phase, but it goes deeper than just my business endeavors and all that. Like I've realized I've been in like the buckle down, musician, entrepreneur, like practice, whether it be the practicing for 5 hours a day kind of narrative, or it's the entrepreneur slaving away on their laptop until 3 a.m., idea. Although I've been in that phase for a long time and it's been great. And I'm emerging with a better sense of myself and what I'm capable of and with new skill sets. But I need to now start like collaborating those skill sets in a way that like can multiply them beyond my own, typing abilities and, what I can do at home. So I spent a lot of time trying to be self-sufficient as a musician and as an entrepreneur. And now I'm realizing I've got to swing the pendulum the other way a little bit.
I like that because so often we can become sort of a one-man army, right? Just take on the world, do it all ourselves. I've had people even suggest that to me. It's like, you should be the one making a crap ton of music, publishing it, making a ton of money off of it, doing sync licensing and placements and all that kind of stuff. And I'll go, that is an option for me. It's not like I haven't thought about it. And I think it's something I'll maybe tackle in the future. But right now, I sort of have my focus, building this website and writing these books and creating these ebooks and courses. So getting too far distracted from that just means like I got to pull longer days and sacrifice sleep and sacrifice social life and a whole bunch of other things that I don't necessarily agree with or don't want to do, because I know that's the culture out there, right? With Gary Vaynerchuk and stuff like that. Work 14, 15, 16-hour days. I mean, you got to be willing to do that, but you don't have to do that if you're focusing on the right things, if you 80-20 your activity.
Yeah. And that's I listened to Gary's stuff, and I'm listening through one of his books right now, and I have to remind myself that, and he talks about in his latest book, like when he speaks about like the most the most extreme time slots of, dedicating to work. I think he's mostly using that as a buffer, one, to express what he's doing, because he has like ambitions beyond most people, and that's fine. But I don't want to, own I don't want to be a billionaire and own sports teams for my quality of life. But he also, I think, he's trying to be practical and give and be like, if you feel like you can't do this and you have some natural obstacles against you, but you work your butt off this much, things will happen. You don't know exactly what, but like if you apply your self-awareness and then you apply all that work, something will happen. And so I have to remind myself that I already work a lot, and that's not necessarily being pointed at me, because I have a tendency to get really stressed out after listening to him, because I'll be like, I need to get back to work. Enough dinner, enough eating. Just get back to work. So it doesn't tend to the other end of the spectrum. It doesn't lend a lot of room for relationships, which he talks a lot about too, as far as whether it be networking or others. So I'm excited to kind of dive back into people land, and even in my music, I kind of was cutting my teeth when YouTube and like the self-sufficient artists were like creating covers and like making enough money to survive off of from that, and so that was my goal for a while because that seemed like the most feasible option, like, and most interesting. But now that I've gotten to a point where I can like at least create versions of my music basically all in-house, with next to no, outsourcing, I'm realizing if I have the funds, there's also time, there's a reason to do it with other people as well. And that's kind of what I hope like Nashville for Hire can be, as a resource where people there's lots of people out there who are learning to do it themselves, but maybe they can dabble in like what it's like to collaborate even from afar and just, hire out that mandolin track or some strings and stuff like that, that help, kind of exponentially change your music and make it something that isn't just the product of your own brain and skill set.
Yeah, I feel that pressure too sometimes, and I think it's mostly self-inflicted, right? You just kind of get to that point where you're like, oh man, I should really push myself to do more. And supper is wasted time, and bathroom is wasted time, and driving is wasted time.
Yep.
And you sort of start counting the hours, going, I need to accomplish more. But that's like it's a productivity mindset, right? It's not an effectiveness mindset, which is a completely different thing. So
and our whole society is based around like the industrial age, when we turned everything into kind of workflow mechanics, when we were able to start having assembly lines and figuring out the most productive ways. And I think we're gonna, on a relational, personal level, we have to question that to certain levels, and then on even a production level, if we talk, economies, there's an idea that if we have a technology, we should use it. And if we can automate an entire factory, then we should, because it'll help the bottom line. But obviously, you can only do that so much if half the country doesn't have jobs anymore, or half of any country, then all of a sudden the big companies can't sell things anyways, because they still need to sell it to someone. So I think there'll be a self-correcting, hopefully sooner than later, where you start to reevaluate what productivity means, as far as not just being the most like bottom line efficient, because there has to be that middle ground.
Exactly. And there are, opposing perspectives out there now, such as my business coach, James Framco, who I had on the podcast in episode 86. So it's good to hear, differing perspectives on the whole thing of productivity and long work days and things like that.
Yeah. I'll have to check out that episode, because if he's addressing that stuff, it sounds interesting.
Oh, yeah, it was a great episode. There's so much gold in there. So getting back to the whole thing of session musicians, I think today you could probably go online, search for one of your favorite players, and approach them with the idea of doing some tracking for your project. Whether they choose to work with you is another matter, but I'm guessing one of the value propositions you're talking about is the ability to streamline that whole process and quickly find quality session players. Is that a good way of looking at it?
Yeah, totally. There's a few different, we're not the only site in the space. We're the only one with the Nashville niche. But as far as, marketplace style plus Nashville, but there's a few other marketplace style music production sites. And of course, there's just good old, Instagram to reach out to players. But the busier people get, the less likely they are to be responsive. So if it's one of your favorite players who isn't one of your friends, there's going to be some red tape to get through in order to get to them. And also, it's just a matter of, it makes it easier for the people selling it, because it's a system that they become more acquainted with and they're more responsive. And then as a customer, it's our pitching point as compared to some of the other sites in this space is that we curate our roster. So we're only pulling on people that we trust to do a good job and that we think are good enough to be on the site. And so you don't have to fish through like a million reviews. And I think everyone in this day and age is getting a little bit tired of like seeing reviews, and there'll be like the most excited review in the world, and then there'll be this 1 star, and like anything basic on Amazon like is impossible to buy, because it'll have 100 great reviews and then 2 1 stars that are like, well, that's a good point, I guess I'll just keep looking for those that toilet paper I was trying to buy online. So Yeah.
Oh, that is so true. Yeah, you can really easily second guess yourself, and maybe you hear it from somebody that you trust, like a business coach or whatever, and you go, I should buy this product, and then you look at the reviews and go, well, it's got like a 70 or 80% rating. Should I really get it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and fortunately, or I found that like my quickest purchases come from the people I trust. So, because I'll at least trust it'll do what I need it to do, whatever it might be. And so we're trying to be that resource. And of course, it takes time and us proving it to each customer that we are that valuable, and different ways of doing that. But hopefully we can become that place so people can go on and not have to feel like they have to spend hours deciding the basic things, and they can just know that it's really a matter of preference, not a matter of question of quality, is kind of the big transition we're trying to have.
That's awesome. And I'm sure this is something that's on everyone's mind right now. Isn't it expensive to hire quality Nashville session players for your project?
It can be. It depends on, it really just depends on which one. There's going to be different tiers that as you're looking through, you're going to find just different costs. But I mean, it really depends on who you're hiring, because there's a lot of really talented Nashville musicians who are not world famous. And so you're not going to, there's a few people that have big ticket, prices. And then if you really want to hire Jason Aldean's drummer and you're the biggest fan of him, like that particular one might cost more than some of the others. But if you're, some of them, you can hire a drummer for, I think anywhere a lot of them are in the 100 range per track, $100. And, if you need a bass player, we have bass players from like $50 up. So it's really not, I've seen, especially comparing to other platforms that are not even like, don't have the notoriety as far as esteemed players, people charge, pretty wide range. And so that range is reflected, on the Nashville side. And then if you have the ability to spend some extra money, then there's room to kind of hire up and find those people that are just, the dream team. And then you can make that a reality if you want. But if you're on a budget, there's a whole range of prices, because we don't make the prices they do. The people who sell do. So they want to be competitive to each other in a sense as well, because if you want to get hired, you can't be the only guy that's charging like $1,000 for a bass track. So so really just it does cost money, but it doesn't cost anything outrageous to get the basics done.
I think you've made a good case for your services, but if you were just to summarize, what would you see as being the biggest advantage of working with Nashville session musicians?
I think the biggest advantage is it's really peace of mind in the process of knowing that you can trust your music, which for me is the scariest part of collaborating. Trust it with someone else who is going to, one, have the experience, and two, have the dedication and professional mindset to be able to take it from where it is to where you want it to be. So I know I'm always terrified when I start working with someone, even if I like their previous work, that it's going to go south or they just might kind of miss it. And we even give a money back guarantee on the first order that someone makes through the site, that the Nashville for Hire covers, not the sellers, because their time is valuable, but we do that so that way people can have peace of mind and kind of step into it knowing that they'll get what they want. So I think that's the biggest benefit.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that a big deal? Especially when you're used to working at a certain speed, like as a musician and even as an entrepreneur, there's so much hermiting that can happen. You're in your closet doing the work, and then you sort of have to trust other people to understand it and be passionate about it and hopefully work at a speed that's acceptable to you. And sometimes you have to, be more realistic and just say, okay, they're not going to be as invested as me in this, but how can I get them to the point where it's the quality and efficiency that I'm looking for?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's something we make sure to guarantee, so that just that peace of mind, I know that would be my biggest fear, especially because it's a new medium for people. I think it'll become not just Nashville for Hire, but I think this will be a thing that's done more and more, and it's kind of a commonplace thing. And so I think people will become comfortable with the idea of creating with people online, because I see it in Nashville as well, even in a music city, so to speak. People do this all the time. They've been doing it for years. It used to be mostly you do tracking at a studio back when that was kind of the way everything was done, and then you do overdubs remotely, and more people would have little overdub rigs where they could layer down some more guitar tracks and not waste everybody's time. And so that was done, and now even more, you get people doing stuff from home for in-town projects. So if it's being done here where you have arguably more studios than most places, then I'm sure it'll be done on a widespread area. So it's the biggest thing that people will be nervous about will be not being in the room with someone. And honestly, I think down the line it'll become easier because with like virtual reality and stuff, once the technology is there and it's a household item, it'll be a no-brainer that a company like us and other ones will pick that up and integrate it so you can still be in the room with people in like a simulated studio space while they're tracking for your song. And that doesn't take many more steps than whatever basic templates will be out there for VR in a few years. So I think eventually that problem will disappear even as people get more and more comfortable with it.
I like it. Now I'm going to transition into a different set of questions to kind of help out our fellow music entrepreneurs or musicpreneurs out there.
Yeah, bring it on.
All right. So the first question I have for you is, how do you market your business, and what channels have you found to be the most beneficial for it?
So far, I've explored Facebook as a primary point. Basically, as a lot of people I'm sure in the audience will understand, I was working off a very limited budget. And so the first goal was just to create the site and figure out how to do that within a budget that was very limited. And so that took a while, and because it wasn't just me, it wasn't just create a Squarespace template that you fill in and then it's done. It was you needed sellers, and I needed to get them to agree and need them to submit information and all that, and figure out workflow and optimize it. So all that took a while, and that was great. So the last few months has been when I've been diving into the marketing side. And so I'm starting more in the Facebook world, and one of the podcasts that's great, because obviously people listen to podcasts, and you've probably listened to it, and I'm totally blanking on the name. It's I think it's Facebook marketing. I'll have to look it up while I'm talking. It's one of the main Facebook marketing podcasts, and I'll look it up as I'm talking. But I basically was like, all right, I just need to see myself as like a Facebook marketer. Oh, The Art of Paid Traffic is a great resource for people who are trying to figure out the landscape of Facebook advertising. And that's one I've listened to a lot. I was like, if I'm going to be spending money and time on this, I want to do it as right as I can. And I also just want to kind of see myself as a marketer for the next few months and pretend like I'm hiring myself, basically. And what would I do as an amateur marketer? So a lot of that, Facebook ads have a lot of layers, but one of the coolest things that have been coming out have been the ability to like clone audiences, and which basically means I can run an ad and make it very targeted to people, or maybe I target it at people who like Guitar Center, and I have the ad be a very specific target that I'm trying to hit, that is very specific wording. It's not vague, so anyone who clicks on it are truly interested in what I'm trying to give them. I then, once I get a certain amount of clicks, I can then have Facebook analyze all that data of the type of people who clicked on that, and then I can have Facebook recreate an audience with people who all fit into those same confines of what that initial batch clicked on. So you're basically cloning that audience onto new potential customers, and then I can market to that audience. So I might take an audience that was 150 people that clicked, and then I can have, millions of people that are fitting the same profile types as those people that I can then market to. So it's, as a marketer, it's great. As a consumer, it's kind of a creepy thing that it can be done. But and Facebook is dealing with their own adventures on many data fronts right now. But this type of thing, I imagine, will stick around. So tools like that and getting acquainted with the different ways that you can use that is super helpful. And I've been basically just doing a lot of email opt-ins. So my strategy, I'm finding that is much more useful, is find a specific piece of your business that you can advertise and not just like the whole thing. So I don't run ads anymore that just say Nashville for hire, allows you to hire Nashville's best musicians. Check it out, and hope that people click on it. I would, if I was running a specific ad for services, I would say like need a guitarist, or some kind of copy that's specific to guitar, and I'd have it go right to our guitar page, and then I do the same for drums. But right now, mostly I'm running specifically for some of our free giveaway guides. One of those is on home recording, and it's kind of the essentials of getting your home rig set up. And so it's an offering of a free PDF guide that goes through the four main components you need for a home rig, and then it goes through. I interviewed almost 10 of our Nashville producers and mixing engineers, and had them give like their go-to list of like getting started stuff that they would tell a friend if they were trying to get started. And so it wasn't like their dream list, it was like the practical list. So people can download that for free through these ads, and then you get them into the email marketing system. And then I'm currently building up that whole back end of the email marketing system, which is really where the work lies, because it's all about giving a bunch more value, and then occasionally chiming in and letting them know, pitching the site to them, or whatever the service may be that you're trying to hit them with specifically. So I do that for that one. I also have one for sync that is the same thing. It's the title's The Number One Thing, Keeping Your Songs from Being Synced, and people can access and get the free download. And I've been pushing that and getting decent click-through rates as far as people actually downloading and who click on it. And that's been interesting. And then the other interesting thing that is kind of all the rage in the marketing space is the whole Facebook chatbot features, which I'm not sure if you've explored at all. But I just literally started getting into it. But and I'm just starting to kind of figure out the next steps. I've been able to run the same kind of ads. So I'm running the same kind of email opt-in ads, but it's for Facebook Messenger opt-ins. And for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what that is, it's basically if you're on Facebook, you have your messages, portal, and you can shoot messages to friends and stuff. But the way that Facebook is set up now, there's a few third-party services that you can basically treat as a business. You can treat your messaging portal as a almost email marketing tool. And so if a customer opts in to be a part of your messaging and subscribes by responding to one of your messages, you then can reach out to them in the future and continue that conversation. And so it's a way that right now is seeing a lot better results as far as cheaper opt-in rates, because it's so convenient. And then it's also email marketing in general. Usually you're getting like a 12% to 25% on average opening rate. And that's a big number. I'm sure it differs on both sides. But for Facebook marketing, from what I've seen, and I'll be testing this for myself soon, it's usually closer to like an 80 to 90% opening rate, and much higher click-through rates as well. So I'm just exploring that, and it's such a wild west in that like it depends so much on terms of use, and it could change at any moment. But for right now, I'm getting a lot cheaper opt-ins. And so just to get people acclimated and familiar with my content, I'm testing that out for pretty cheap right now, and at least seeing good success on cheap opt-in rates to get people signed up. So those have been kind of my focus for the last couple months.
That's awesome. I think the listeners are going to find a lot of value in that. I know I'm going to be listening back to this, taking some notes.
Oh, well, good. And definitely check out that other podcast then too, because they'll be able to dive even deeper than I can.
Excellent. What is the biggest challenge of selling to musicians, producers, engineers, and how would you say you've overcome it?
That's a good question. I think for Nashville for Hire, the challenge is going to be, I think it's that trust factor of trusting you with your music over this, this area, just this cyberspace of, who knows who's on the other end. And so one of the ways I'm trying to overcome that is when I started Nashville for Hire, I really had no desire. I was kind of burnt out on trying to create a personality brand, because I have a podcast as well, and it's a lot of time thinking about myself. And so I was like, I'm just gonna have this business be its own image and whatever. And then as I'm growing through it, I think I'm realizing that the value of having a face connected with a brand is just is really a trust thing and a relational thing. And so my goal is for there to be many faces of Nashville for Hire, especially with the fact that we have so many sellers, and then we'll have, customer service reps and everything as we go on. And so my hope is not for me to be the exclusive face, but for right now, when it's at this startup phase, I'm really trying to now dive into creating some facial recognition with the brand, so that way when people trust me, they then can trust the company and get over some of that the creepiness of hiring out and basically placing your dream songs in the hands of strangers across the internet. And we're in an age where Airbnb exists now, and there's kind of this backlash against the isolationist movements of build bigger fences and don't open the doors, and stranger danger at its highest degree. From I think we went from, at least in American culture, from the 50s of down, and we kind of spiraled into this place of distrust. And now with Lyft and Uber and all these things, it's kind of this reacclimating to not just assuming your neighbor is going to stab you if you turn your back. And so I think in the same way, that's what we're doing, is we're providing a service that there has to be that trust, whether it be, a copyright, trusting people with your material, or trusting people with your passion. But I think putting my face with it, and then as we grow, putting more faces, more branded, people, and more trustworthy people attached to this site, I think that's how it'll be overcome. And I'm seeing it a little bit in that when I'm doing this marketing now, where I'm just giving value and really not asking anything, you see people then asking for more information and kind of trusting you as a source. Whereas if you were just coming out and saying, I am a great source of information for this, use our service, nobody's going to believe that right on face value. So I think that would probably be the answer to that one.
Yeah, I mean, guilty until proven innocent, right? That's the approach we're seeing these days. But I think you're still right. There's a lot of fly-by-night companies that make big promises, and then some musicians buy in. I think it's fewer and fewer. I think they're getting smarter now, and they realize, there's no panacea, there's no cure-all, there's no silver bullet.
Right.
The way to succeed is through hard work and dedication to your craft and learning to market some of the things that we talk about on this show. So it's good to see that people are beginning to realize that, I'm not fly by night. The podcast started in 2009. Not this one, my first podcast. Yeah. First podcast, but
yeah, kudos to you.
No, thanks. So yeah, I'm this is a passion for me, and I'm trying to provide genuine values. So hopefully, that boosts the credibility that I have over time.
Yeah. And I think putting your doing a podcast like you're doing, it's a similar format to the one I've done. You get to place your name and your brand with these trustworthy names of musicians or whatever it be, and it automatically is going to boost your credibility because you're getting affiliated with these high quality and trustworthy people.
Yeah, that's huge. So what would you say are some of the biggest struggles you've encountered as an entrepreneur?
On one end, I've been fortunate enough to have a pretty good ego development throughout my life. I had two parents that were very supportive of myself, and I had enough wisdom put inside of me to know that you don't just come off like you are confident, because then you're an asshole. But I can also I have enough inside of me that I can be productive. Basically, it's enough to make it so that way if I have an idea, I think, well, I could probably do that if I put my energy to it. And so that allows me to push through a lot of the dark night of the soul moments where you're not sure what to do. But I think part of the isolationist ideas of like put your head down and grind, which is important. Everybody has to have their time where they really, hone their craft before they go out and, try to put it in front of everyone. I think the problem with that sometimes is that you can have different voices in your head that just decide one day that you should stop because it's not as successful as you think it should be at that point, and therefore it must be an embarrassingly bad idea that everyone thinks you should stop except for you, and you just didn't realize it. And I had that for writing music for music licensing and sync. I'd done it for about 2 years with a company here in town where I'd just been adding to my catalog and keeping my head down and just trying to hone that skill. And I just wasn't seeing anything from it. And I would have moments where I'd just, feel. It's funny because I've listened to podcasts and read lots of great books throughout the process, so I could label the moment. Most of the time I could be like, oh, this is one of those moments where the people talk about it was really bad, and then things keep going, and a lot of times it gets better, and so I could hear that. But then there were certain sneakier voices at times that would get through that narrative, and somehow I wouldn't label them, and you just end up sitting there feeling lousy. So I think being self-aware enough and giving yourself enough grace to go through the entrepreneurial journey where it's if you're being self-aware and putting your energy, you talk about the 80-20 and all that, putting your energy in the right places, then trusting that something will come out of that, whether or not it is what you picture or whether or not it is a true quote unquote success. If you're putting in high quality work into things, you will move from some kind of A to maybe B, maybe E or G. You don't know, but you'll go somewhere. And so trusting that it'll be okay, and trusting yourself to be creative enough to create solutions out of whatever letter you end up after A, is what's allowed me to kind of get through it. But there are definitely moments where I felt like kind of an unromantic sadness about well, this isn't where I want it yet. And so instead of seeing it as oh, this is my moment to push through, sometimes you see it as this monotonous thing, and you're like, I'm just being an idiot. Why don't I just go do something normal? So keeping an eye out for those tricky, self-doubt moments that can mask themselves as common sense or as, something like that. Those ones can be a little harder to find.
I can relate to that a lot, and it's a bit cheesy, but focus stands for follow one course until success. And
right.
I'm just realizing the importance of that recently in my work. And I'm like, there's so many things I could be doing. There's dozens of projects that I would love to get started even now, but I recognize the importance of sticking with this. It's not about not changing the approach, because I think that's silly. You try things expecting different results, and you keep doing the same things. You're not going to get anywhere. So it is necessary to change your approach sometimes to get to where you want to go, but keep following that course. And that's the freedom. You'll then have the freedom that allows you to engage in those other projects you've always wanted to do.
Yeah, and that's where the learning, comes from. Failure or success is when you've had tunnel vision long enough to get into the deep, the deep parts of it. Because otherwise, I could create like 40 websites this week with different ideas that would all get to the same level where I'm at now with Nashville for Hire within like a month. Because I have a formula for that now, but like to get it to the point of, major profitability and like all cylinders running and having a team, like I'd have no idea. I'd just have a bunch of clones of the same success level or lack thereof of my ventures I've done before. And so, I think the focusing is where you get to actually create something that is worth creating again if you want to keep creating different things. And so you don't get there unless you really focus, and it's so easy. I definitely am a victim of getting distracted and thinking like, well, I'm not getting the traction I want this week on Nashville for Hire. I had that one other idea. Why don't I go create a website and a logo and do this? And then a month later, I'm like, all right, I haven't touched the other website in a month, and I just created a clone of it that is at the same point as the other one. And now I want to find a new distraction. So, that can be really tricky.
Oh yeah. I mean, that is so true. And I struggle with the same things, and our journeys, have certain parallels in that regard.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah. On the flip side, what are some of the biggest victories you've experienced as an entrepreneur?
I think on the sync, because I kind of correlate them as far as like, doing work and putting your head down and thinking a little outside the box. On the music and sync front, this last year I've had about a little over a year, I've had a handful of good rewards basically for the hard work as far as sync goes. And so I've had some commercials I've got my music on, some TV shows, and like 2 weeks ago I had one of my songs at the end of Grey's Anatomy episode, which was really exciting. And so stuff like that are helping boost my brand. And then also I'm able to live off of that stuff right now, has been huge. And that came from like the hustle of putting your head down and not stopping, because I thought maybe it's embarrassing that it's been like as long as it has, and I don't have, anything new to tell friends when I say that I'm working on songs for TV and film and sync and all that. So that's been one. I think on the business side, it's been with Nashville for Hire. One of the best feelings was after finally getting the site up and then getting the first order to come in where it feels like it's a real thing was awesome, because it goes from being this theoretical thing for so long to being something that someone went through the process to make a purchase, which, like I said, there are very reasonable prices on there, but it's not a $20 watch accessory. Like it's a purchase someone has to make and think about. So the fact that someone did all that and still made the purchase was a great feeling. And then some of the, a lot of it has been like little successes along the way of like diving into the marketing and finding marketing copy that is working enough to just kind of automate the ads and still keep seeing email opt-ins come in, while you're sleeping and stuff like that. That at first, like you make your first Facebook ad, and for me, it would just be like nothing would happen. And you'd be like, I'm paying, like, why aren't these imaginary things off in the distance, not clicking on my links? And then you realize it's humans that are on the other end, and they don't just do things because you put words in the air. So to get things to a point where they're actually working like that, and where you can spend money and get results, was like huge. And that was very uplifting for my spirits as I was going through it.
Yeah, I so get what you mean, because some days you wake up and you're like, how old am I again? And how long have I been at this?
Right.
Shouldn't I be further along? Yeah.
Right.
I don't have the best answers. I did record in episode 85, Overcoming Entrepreneurial Insecurity, kind of did my best to sum up how I try to approach that and how I try to look at things when it comes to like comparing myself to others, which is, I once wrote comparison is the root of all unhappiness. So,
yeah, that kind of hits it. Yeah. There's not much more you can do. If gratitude is like the key to contentment, then the comparison is the key, the other end of that just makes you feel miserable regardless of your circumstances.
Great perspective. Now, you mentioned books. So which books have inspired and helped you on your journey?
Ooh, good question. Actually, let me see if I have this. I think I wrote down, because I've kind of acquired almost like my textbooks that have helped be like my biggest guides. And I'm curious. I wrote it down. So let's see. On a business side, ones that are kind of becoming my go-tos that I end up carrying around in my bag all the time, which makes for a heavy bag because I'm always afraid I'm going to need to like reference something. And these have started to kind of all overlap. It's kind of like in a way how like most world religions have like a certain deep mystical level that all, overlap with each other. Most of the major ones in the same way, like a lot of these kind of signature books out there all have their cores that overlap and then they fill in these different useful gaps. So, speaking of Gary Vaynerchuk, one of the ones that helped with social media and really just for marketing in general was Jab, Jab, Right Hook, or Jab, 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 Right Hook, one of those. That one's super helpful in just understanding the philosophy behind marketing on a social media level, but also email and really just anything. It's the whole idea of like giving content over and over again, and then you make a sale. So you don't give until you've established that trust and the reciprocity effect where they've been given something, so they want to be able to give back. That one I read a few years back, but that one's huge. And then another one that's come out is StoryBrand. That's a Nashville-based company, and they deal with marketing as well. But their whole thing is they were started by a guy named Don Miller, who is he was kind of like a novelist, not a novelist, yes, yep, yeah. He went Chris created a company here in Nashville, and he had been like a memoir writer, and then his most recent book was kind of chronicling the core tenets of the StoryBrand company and the company's ideas. And they have a podcast as well. That's a great introduction for people who are curious. And that's just, I think it's StoryBrand. If you type that in, it'll come up. It's got like a green backdrop and a picture of Don's face. And so. Their whole thing is basically learning how to explain your website in the most concise but clear way, and not getting in your own way of making sales. So they teach companies how to do that, and their book is basically on how do you one, express your ideas in the most clear, concise way, and then two, how do you invite your customers into, actually, it's kind of how do you invite yourself into their story. So you're telling their story and positioning yourself as a guide within that, instead of saying, check out our cool business that, we've done this, this, and this, and you should be a part of our great story that's already going. Because most people see themselves as the hero of a story, not as someone to just be added on. So they kind of, their big like paradigm shift that's been the most helpful to me is that, you position yourself as the guide, not as the hero of the story you're telling your clients or your customers. So that book is really great, and it's kind of like a textbook. It's just like it goes through marketing at the end too, and like it's a great place to start. And then there's another one, Copy That Sells. That's going to be, and I'm blanking on the name of the author. But that one dives into just writing good copy and sales copy and how to write that for whether it be for emails or for Facebook or whatever. It's kind of again a textbook on that. We also, that one again, it's just always in my bag, ready to be referenced. And then I just finished up and I'm implementing it within my email marketing. But launch is a classic that probably a lot of people have already checked out, but that one is just all about creating a launch cycle for products or for ideas or whatever. And so I'm in the middle of implementing that as we speak. So I'll have more to be able to add to that in the future. But for right now, it's a trustworthy source because it's worked for bajillions of people. I'm just at the beginning stages. So those are kind of like my big four on the business front. And then I'm trying to think if there's any others that stick out. I've read kind of a range of different fields, but on the business front, those are kind of my go-tos that I would recommend to anyone getting going.
That's awesome. And I was just going to say, the Donald Miller connection was I interviewed Steve Taylor, and Steve Taylor worked on the movie Blue Like Jazz, which is based on Donald Miller's book, of course. And that's such a weird and interesting book about spirituality and just life and disappointments almost. But it's cool to see that, Don has since moved on and made big things of himself in a way in the business world. So
he's had a cool journey. I grew up kind of in the bubble that he grew up in, and so there's a few different authors in that space that have all kind of like moved into. It's had an interesting evolution, that subculture, and so his part of it is cool, and I really enjoy. I've always enjoyed his content as a writer, and then now as a writer still, but as a CEO or whatever he is position wise, there as a founder of that company, and the podcast is great, and they do a good job of pulling on different guests and getting good information out of them. So. If nothing else, it's worth checking out for the people who are already obviously listening to podcasts.
That's great. And I shan't keep you too much longer, but here's an opportunity to geek out a little bit. So what tools and apps are you using to run your business?
Let's see. I'm in this transition phase of because I'm a musician and there's a umpteen million things that go into running that as a business. And then because I have Nashville for Hire and then my podcast and a couple like side ideas that are partially existing. I would just go through cycles of like obsessing over one, everything else gets neglected. So I've just recently started using, and I can't do a full review on it yet, but so far I like it, an app called Timely, Timely. That's basically a scheduling app that I can block in my week, and it's not necessarily tied to times of the day. It's just chunks and hours of different things you need to get done in that day. And as you do them, you can use it as a self-timer to make sure, clock in and clock out to make sure you're getting exactly the amount of time each day that you need to. And the big thing for me is that I then can block out my entire week instead of just blocking out my day. So I can know if I follow this set week and do everything on it, by the end of the week I'll have moved all of my endeavors forward and nothing gets left behind, which has not been the case. And so I'm excited to start implementing that. I've been traveling the last week, which threw off the normal schedule, but I'm excited to test it out and use that on a more routine schedule. And then trying to think of, I kind of bounce around. I use everything as far as apps go, from like, I also use some Evernote stuff to store more long-term ideas. I have a Mac, and Apple products. So I use the notes thing for like my, I've used that up until now for my day-to-day scheduling, but that's where I was running into the problem of like not mapping out on a broad enough spectrum where I was actually including everything. And my issue was I would create a great to-do list for a day, and I'd have categories and different types of things, and certain things would be bold, others wouldn't, in italics, and it would be really great. And then I'd think, next month I need to like record this cover. So I'd be like, well, I don't want to forget that. So I'd add it in, but it wasn't actually for that day. It was just for the future. But if I didn't put it on that list, I'd forget about the other list and it would just disappear. So I'd end up having these to-do lists that would be like 300 items, and I'd just spend my days panicking because I couldn't get through 4 of them, and then I'd eventually like have to start another list just because I'd have something specific I'd have to do, and I'd end up just abandoning the other lists, and they just disappear into non-existence, and get lost. So this new way is a way I'll probably use the Notes app to just say, here's my long-term ideas, and then I'll have a check-in once a week on my schedule that says check in with that app and implement what you need to get done next week from that. So it gives me basically just peace of mind on a scheduling level, and it's all self-organized and self-sustained. So if I don't do that, I'm finding things just always fall through the cracks.
I get what you mean. I actually used to spread myself out with Asana and Evernote and various other apps, TickTick and stuff like that, to where my task lists and ideas were all over the place. I think Evernote still has value as a long-term idea saver. I think it's great for that. But I've tried to force myself to just use Google Drive for most of that stuff now for my whole organization and life. So
that's a good idea. I'm trying to consolidate, so I'll probably, as I go, even more so consolidate. But then I'll have to go through the process of either moving a bunch of things from one space to another or not. But it's the curse of like options and of good advertising, because you'll see an ad about organization, be like, oh wow, I'd love to be organized. I'll download that one too.
Yeah, I think every app sort of consumes a certain amount of headspace and energy, and you get to too many, and all of a sudden you can't think anymore.
Yeah, right. You're just spread out, and it's the worst kind of clutter because it like exists in a world that doesn't exist, and so finding things within like a phone and a computer and 4 hard drives, it just becomes a giant task to like find a picture that you knew you took last year, but you have no idea where it could be.
All right, cool. Is there anything else I should have asked?
Not that I can think of. No, I think that's it.
Well, it's been great talking to you, and perhaps we should catch up in 6 months or a year down the line, kind of get a sense of where you're at. But this has been fantastic, so thank you for your time and your generosity.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to go to musicentrepreneurhq.com for show notes and other goodies, and leave us a review in iTunes to help us spread the word.